Secretary of State Mike Pompeo actually believes that melting ice caused by climate change is a wonderful thing because it opens up new business opportunities. This is what he said during his appearance at the Arctic Council in Finland.
The Arctic is at the forefront of opportunity and abundance. It houses 13% of the world's undiscovered oil, 30% of its undiscovered gas, and an abundance of uranium, rare earth minerals, gold, diamonds, and millions of square miles of untapped resources. Fisheries galore. And its centerpiece, the Arctic Ocean, is rapidly taking on new strategic significance. Offshore resources, which are helping their respective coastal states, are the subject of renewed competition. Steady reductions in sea ice are opening new passageways and new opportunities for trade. This could potentially slash the time it takes to travel between Asia and the West by as much as 20 days. Arctic sea lanes could come the 21st century Suez and Panama canals.
So as I had mentioned, this is the Arctic Council. It is a meeting of various nations in Finland to talk about various issues, including the fact that there are 4 million people living in the Arctic whose lives where they live is in danger. And so there was maybe some consideration about discussing climate change, but the United States was the only country that refused to even mention climate change. In fact, it appears that the Trump administration, on one hand, keeps referring to climate change as a Chinese hoax, and then on the other hand, admits that climate change is happening, but thinks that it's a great thing because it opens up new business opportunities, according to Pompeo. And he was also quoted as saying, "This is America's moment to stand up as an Arctic nation." The region has become an arena of global power and competition. So who cares what we're doing to that habitat? Who cares what we're doing to the environment? Who cares what type of ramifications future generations, this current generation, has to deal with? People are gonna make money off of this, so awesome. That is essentially what Pompeo is saying.
There's a few things on this. First of all, as a bald person, I try to look at I try to look on the bright side, and you know, when you lose your hair, I said at least I'm aerodynamic, right? So it feels like he's looking at the bright side. He's like, hey, at least things, boats are gonna be going faster now that there won't be any ice to slow them down. So that's number one. Number two, if this was written, it wasn't going off the cuff. Am I correct?
It seems as though he's reading a prompter. Yes.
Yeah, because like when Trump goes off the cuff, you go, he's just going off the cuff. This guy wrote this, so somebody proofread this and said, let's go with this whole. The melting of the ice caps is good because boats will go faster.
Yeah.
And number three, I had to look up Pompeo again about where he went to school. He went to Harvard, and so this looks bad for Harvard. This just because you go to Harvard doesn't make you smart. And by the way, remember when Trump said that thing at the United Nations? I forget what he said, but everybody laughed. Remember he said something and he was trying to be serious, but they laughed at him?
I do remember that. I don't remember what he said.
I would have loved to see the camera angle on the Europeans and the Finnish people there watching him going, is this guy really saying what he is saying? These Americans are really stupid.
Yeah. And something also kind of that hits me, maybe I guess I should say, as a woman with a weave, I can tell you that, change, it happens and it's a good thing. But unfortunately, in this situation, it's not good at all. The world population has doubled in size over the last 50 years. And there's so many other mouths to feed, as well as people who are taking advantage of resources and need resources and food and everything that goes with that. And the fact that we're not using sustainable resources and energy, and we're not moving in a direction that will continue to allow this earth to sustain us in our growing numbers, it's just, the greed is just, it's intolerable. It's disgusting.
It is also fascinating how, on one hand, you have the US government that consistently judges the inner workings of other governments, of other sovereign countries. So for instance, Lula da Silva in Brazil is a political prisoner. He was accused of corruption, and there was really no evidence of that corruption other than one individual who was willing to testify against him in return for a plea deal. Now I bring that up because you'll have the US political establishment arguing, well, that corruption, we can't support Lula da Silva. That corruption is hideous. But what you're seeing right now is Mike Pompeo displaying for the world the type of corruption that we have in the United States, like to the point where he is willing to push the entire world to complete doom just so US business interests or multinational corporations can profit off of it. And it's absolutely disgusting. We have no leg to stand on to judge other countries. We have no leg to stand on to judge Venezuela. And yes, there are issues in Venezuela, but we have issues at home that we need to deal with. We have absolutely no right to judge or take this self-righteous position on any other thing, any other country.
And by the way, he's touting the benefits of less ice so that boats can go faster. I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, as we progress, perhaps there's going to be ways to transport things not through water, maybe in the air. I think we have airplanes now.
Yes.
So I'm just saying, it's really looking at, I don't know what the job was for the speechwriter. It really was like, hey man, the globe is warming up and the world is about to be destroyed and melted. Find me some good things. What are some other good things?
Positive spin. It's
It
positive
was
spin.
complete and total positive spin. And I love how they'll do this when it serves their purpose in terms of getting money, but then they do this fear mongering otherwise when it helps further ethnocentric racism and bigotry. And something else, like you had pointed out in terms of being in the air and using that as a way to maybe ship resources and goods and whatnot. The thing is now, because we have climate change, it also means that there's greater turbulence going on in the sky. As a result, planes are less stable. And so it's just more problematic, whether it's by water, land, or air. It's just, it's not a win.
I think the reality of the situation is if the average person is harmed by what's going on with the environment, then nothing changes. Or at least it's not enough to convince the people in positions of power to do something about that. And I'm specifically talking about the United States because there are world leaders who want to do something about this. I mean, part of the reason why all of these countries got together at this event in Finland was to talk about what we can do to combat climate change. And that included Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden. And the United States is, it appears, the only country that just refuses to even use the phrase climate change. And I also want to quickly read you a different statement that Pompeo made at this gathering. He said, quote, "I'm sure it was a good party," referring to the Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah.
"I'm sure it felt good to sign the agreement. But at the end of the day, what matters to human health, what matters to citizens of the world is that we actually have an impact on improving health, and our technology, our innovation, and R&D, meaning research and development, we put in the United States. That's what will drive better climatic outcomes. That's what will create cleaner air, safer drinking water, and that's what I hope the whole world will focus on." As if he cares at all about cleaner air. Again, he's deferring to business interests, right? When he says innovation, he's referring to business interests. We all know that.
And I love that statement about cleaner air and water. In part, it's like, how's Detroit doing? And let's talk about Puerto Rico. How's that running? So it's kind of like, do you really care? Or do you just want to, I don't know, maybe get some more money?
Yeah, this whole thing of climate deniers. I read a great op-ed piece written by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the lack of emphasis we put on scientists and intellectuals, and how much emphasis we put on athletes.
Okay.
And he was talking about how that then leads to this world we live in where people go, I'm not gonna listen to the expert, I'm gonna go on my gut. So I'm not talking about Pompeo, who obviously knows that this is bad stuff that he's saying, but he's protecting those interests. But the people that then support him and go, this is a hoax, the climate change is a hoax, because my gut tells me it's a hoax. And why was there cold weather in the East Coast? The difference between weather and climate and all that stuff. This type of stuff allows people to believe in their guts and not in research. And I mean, it's frustrating where people that support somebody like a Mike Pompeo on something like this.
I think it's the failure of it's a failure of the education system. And I don't mean that to just simply criticize public education. I mean that because education has been effectively dismantled and defunded. And so critical thinking is not a thing anymore because the resources for quality education have been stripped away. There's also the issue of the media and the way that they have equivocated this very serious problem, and they act as if climate deniers are on the same ground as climate scientists, and that is just not the case. So that misinformation and that lack of critical thinking has really seeped into the minds of some Americans, certainly not all. And remember, in order to do something about climate change, all of us have to do things that are inconvenient, which of course I'm willing to do, but a lot of people don't want to have to make those changes. And I think it's a very convenient excuse to defer to the climate deniers and the so-called Chinese hoax to keep perpetuating this dangerous cycle that we're in.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.